Okay, we're going to take a look at cultural diffusion in Southwest Asia and North Africa. Now go ahead and get this definition I have for you here in your notebook about cultural diffusion. This is a process by which a new idea or product and or people are spread from one area to another. All right, and then we're going to start off looking at the Phoenicians, who are like the ancient Amazon.com of the time period, and you'll see why. Um, and we'll look at the Zoroastrians and the Hebrews. Now, looking at the seafaring traders called Phoenicians, they're going to build these beautiful ships, and instead of farming, they're going to go from community to community, buying up whatever goods that each community has and selling them to the next community. All right, they're going to start off here in Mesopotamia, and they're eventually going to spread out all over the Mediterranean. All right, they're going to trade with Egypt, the Greeks, the Romans, the Carthaginians, all over this area, spreading not only their goods, but Mesopotamian culture. Now, they were also great craftsmen, um, producing all types of new metals, glass, ivory. But one thing they're going to be famous for is a purple dye. The Egyptian pharaoh is going to love this dye and is going to make it only the only color that the Egyptian royal family would wear. After that, the Persians, the Greeks, and then the Romans are all going to adopt this for the royal family. So to always be associated with nobility. Um, now the Phoenicians, of course, they're also going to modify the Sumerian writing system, and they're going to adopt it and simplify it so that an uneducated Phoenician would be able to use it. Because if you're trading with different peoples, you want to be able to jot down um, whatever you did pretty quickly. And so they wanted a simple system, and they came up with this 20 letter alphabet. All right, the Greeks are going to adopt it. Later on, the Romans, and it's going to eventually spread to all of Europe. Um, it's also going to spread to parts of it. You can see it's going to have some influence on the development of Arabic. Now, answer these two questions I have for you here, and if you need to pause, go right ahead. Otherwise, we're going to look at the Hebrews. Now, the Hebrews were different than most of the other cultures around them. They were monotheistic, whereas most of Mesopotamia was polytheistic. They were led by Abraham. Now, Abraham made God a promise that he would worship only him, and God would promise to bless and protect all of his descendants. All right, this is called a covenant. All right, a covenant. Now, this is going to take Abraham through a long life. All right, and he's going to have many descendants, of whom will be called the nation of Israel. Now, the nation of Israel, in terms of history, I want you to look at their development. Okay, it begins with Abraham. Then we're going to wind up with Moses in Egypt. Um, and after Moses and the Ten Commandments, that's when they're going to establish the kingdom of Israel under David, who's going to unite the 12 tribes. Now, his son is going to build this great temple to house the Ark of the Covenant, that is the Ten Commandments. Everything was going great until
They say all peoples must go through some hard times. Well, we Jews are getting ours out of the way early. From here on out, it's going to be nothing but smooth sailing.
and that's when they bumped into the bloody Assyrians. The bloodthirsty Assyrians conquered most of the area, including Israel. Now, a little later on, the Assyrians are going to lose their empire to the Babylonians, and there's going to be a ruler named Nebuchadnezzar. Now, Nebuchadnezzar, who ruled the area with an iron fist, was not a nice guy. Not only did he control old Babylon, all right, but he is going to reach down and take over all of this area here and here. So he's going to take over old Egypt and mess what became the Jews. Now, when the Jews didn't want to pay their taxes and try to stand up to Nebuchadnezzar, this is what happened.
In 589 BC, the people of Judah, last of the Israelites, rebelled against the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar. He responded by ordering his troops to lay waste to Jerusalem and destroy the Judeans' most precious possession, the Temple of Solomon. Then Nebuchadnezzar ordered that the king of Judah should watch his sons be put to death as a sign to all that his royal line had come to an end. Afterward, the Babylonians led the people of Jerusalem into exile in Babylon. As they traveled the 600 miles from their tiny homeland to Babylon, the Judeans' future looked grim. Only a few generations earlier, the northern tribes of the Israelites had been taken into exile and vanished forever. Now the Judeans too seemed destined to disappear, with all memory they had existed as a people lost forever. In spite of their despair and the incredible odds against them, the Judeans decided to fight for their survival as a people. They chose to fight not with spears and swords, but by writing a book. In every spare moment they could find, the greatest of the Judean scribes began to rewrite and edit together stories about their past, which had been handed down to them by their ancestors. The book they compiled was the first edition of the most influential work in human history, the Hebrew Bible.
Now, here's the Hebrew Bible here, known as the Torah. Okay. Now, the reason they wrote it down was because they were surrounded by the more powerful Babylonians, and they wanted to remind their people, their descendants, of who they were. Okay, what laws that they were supposed to abide by, what customs they were supposed to live by. Okay, and most certainly that they were to observe the Sabbath, that is the seventh day, and keep it holy. Now, the Jewish scribes were not alone when they were writing these stories. They were amongst the Babylonian scribes who were not practicing Judaism. They had their own faith. For the most part, they were monotheistic, all right, and they subscribed to a faith called Zoroastrianism. Now, this faith is going to play a huge influence on the development of Judaism. For the most part, all right, it came out of Persia, okay, which is modern day Iraq. I'm sorry, Iran. For the most part here, it deals with that the earth being a battleground between good and evil. Okay, that is what I call the God-devil complex. All right. Now, many beliefs that they have are going to work their way into the development of Judaism. Ideas about angels, heaven, hell, Satan, all of that is going to work its way into Christianity and Islam um, via the development of Judaism. Now, there are many points of debate, but here's one example of a modern debate about cultural diffusion with biblical scholars.
But they were called Sumer, and they told the story of a great flood. It's one of the most familiar of all Bible stories, the saga of Noah's Ark. An angry God, a wooden boat, a deluge. It's the story of Noah and his family escaping to the ark with every species of animal and surviving the punishing flood, while the rest of mankind is destroyed. It's a primal tale, stirring our deepest hopes and fears. A story found in the Bible, but also in another ancient text, a text discovered in the ruins of Sumer. Early this century, a group of Mesopotamian tablets were translated. They revealed the earliest known legend of a cataclysmic flood. The world's very first written epic, it is the story of the mythic king Gilgamesh. His tale of a great flood predates the Bibles by at least 2,000 years.
For 7 days and 7 nights, the flood had swept over the land, and the huge boat had been tossed about by the storms.
The boat then runs aground on a mountain. He sends out birds, which is the story which has an eerie similarity to the story of the biblical flood. It's a wonderful story.
More than 5,000 years ago, the story of the Great Flood was first told here, in the ancient cities of Sumer, Uruk, Eridu, and Ur.
Now, did the story belong to Noah or Gilgamesh? Biblical scholars are still debating this today. Now, what we do know about the Jews for certain is that a Persian king is going to finally release them and allow them to return to their homeland. He was Cyrus the Great, one of the tolerant rulers of the Persian Empire. Now, would eventually give birth to, as it is the mother religion of Christianity and Islam. Here's a few facts about Judaism. Okay, one thing I want you to pay particular attention to is this word right here, diaspora. All right, which just simply means the dispersal of the Jews. Each time that an empire took over the area, they took the Jews and they sent them around to other parts of the empire. All right, they dispersed them or scattered them, which is why we call them the diaspora. Now, looking at our week, we've talked about the Mesopotamians, okay? We've looked at cuneiform, um, Hammurabi's Code, the ziggurat, of course, the Epic of Gilgamesh, all right, and Egypt, the hieroglyphs, all right, their pyramid complex, and of course, their form of government, theocracy. Now, I want you to get your notebook ready. You should have everything in there from this week. All right, and I got one last set of questions I want you to answer. Um, for this one, you're making a collage. Okay, you can use pictures, text. Um, I would put this on printer paper. Make it look as neat as possible. All right, and these are some of the. All of this is fair play, from dates, maps, core beliefs, holy books, holidays, influences. Okay, anything about Judaism. Outside of that, that concludes our look at cultural diffusion.